Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, here with Professor Professor Pixel, broadcasting to you from the Pinos Palace just west of Orlando, Florida. We are live doing our James Bond review. It's our second episode, Professor Pixel, so that means it's the second James Bond movie, which is, of course, From Russia with Love. And Pixel, I got to say, the fact that you haven't seen all the James Bond, being the relatively young newcomer to the Xtreme Movie Show, bringing that millennial perspective, I think is rather intriguing, and hence the reason why we're covering, because let's face it, who doesn't love watching Bond movies, and even better when you get to be older and you've seen them all dozens of times, arguing about them, which is what we're going to get to with this. So last week we started off doing Dr. No. Sean Connery, we talked about some things that stood out to us. We'll kind of revisit some of those things here in a little bit and compare it to the second film, which came out a year later in 1963, From Russia with Love, a Cold War-ish type film, and it definitely feels like it. But my initial thoughts, I like Dr. No. This is better. It's more beautiful. It feels like a spy movie, just like Dr. No did. So I think this is definitely an improvement, generally speaking, in a lot of areas, with only one or two things in there that I found it kind of cringy, or maybe not what I prefer, whatever you want to call it. But overall, an excellent film. It's one that I always seem to kind of go back and go, it's fun watching this film because it's so laid back. With Dr. No, sometimes the pacing was off a little bit too, but ultimately I think it's an excellent film. I know it's only the second one we've covered, but what's your initial take on this?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think, getting comfortable. So you have the first one starting out, and we enjoyed it, clearly. We had some problems towards the end, really, but we enjoyed the film overall. With this one, we are getting more comfortable with James Bond, and thus SPECTRE grows, and we get to see how they go about their operations. And I think that is beneficial. Starting right out of the gate, if you don't mind me just moving right along.
Well, we do have a big starting out of the gate, an opening gambit, if you will. Go ahead.
Yeah, we see clearly what looks like to be James Bond, and he's walking around this looks like a floral maze, and he's passing statues as he's being sought after by this blonde man. And they are avoiding each other for the most part until eventually the blonde man gets to him, and he takes out like this piano wire from his wrist, and he's choking Bond. And it seems that right at the start, he's dead. And that's when all the lights come on this luxurious looking estate, and people are watching, and they come on up, and quickly we see Bond again, except it's not him. It's this grayish mask, and they pull it off, and it's this man with his thin mustache, and it's clearly not actually Bond, but some target, and the blonde man is training. And that's when we go right into the intro for From Russia with Love.
Yeah, it is a nice way to start, because you also get the very beginning. I don't believe they did this in Dr. No. It's the first bullseye shot where he's walking and then turns, and then it starts the actual opening action sequence, which may or may not be related to the rest of the episode. So one of the little things I noticed about it too, and as he's going through this maze, it's at night. The guy that's chasing this fake Bond is a physically well put together human specimen. Of course, would be what's his name, the boat captain on Jaws later on. This is him in his early career. It's you're like, oh, okay, but at least you're getting ladies, body parts jiggling around, tassels, the exotic nature of what it meant to be cool. And that's the whole thing too, is that the books are one thing and movies are another, and translating them, it doesn't always work. And it depends, of course, on the artist's vision here. But for me, what I really liked here was that, okay, when you're watching this as a young man or even as an adult, it's really like a fantasy. You want the spy stuff going on, the action. You want to have sex. You want to be drawn in the world stuff. You want to be a competent man. So this is kind of pure fantasy escapism stuff. I don't expect it to be perfect as far as, oh my God, they got this wrong. Spies would never do this or that. But we want it to be somewhat believable. And in Dr. No, I think we got a pretty decent spy caper, and this one just kind of polishes a few things with it, because this opening with the women and the lights with everything, it's really, really exotic. But after that, of course, you get into great shot of Venice. And Venice in Bond movies, you should just go to Venice almost every other Bond movie, because it's just that damn good. And for me, what I liked was this actual opening scene. The Gambit was okay, but this whole chess sequence we have, where we have two players playing and they're on this elevated platform. It's just, I've always popped as a kid watching this scene because it's so cool. I have a friend of mine that plays very high level chess, and he's a genius level dude, taught me how to play, and I'm just a rookie. I know the basics, and that's it. But watching this, it's elegant. It's a niche kind of thing. You got people wearing suits. It's an excuse to kind of see high society stuff. And it's just really awesome. I know that this particular chess game is modeled off a very famous one. I can't recall what it is. I didn't bother to look it up, because I geek out every single time I'm watching this, when this one dude who's looking at his opponent, he's getting a glass of water served to him, and he picks it up, and underneath it, he's holding the napkin that says, "You're needed immediately," because we find out he's not exactly just a chess guy. And I thought, this is a nice, freaking cool open. It's very spyish and secretive stuff. But we find out, of course, that he can see several moves ahead, being the great guy that he is. And so to me, seeing that, knowing we're in Venice, he's being brought to this high-end yacht where you get these fighting fish and stuff going on, and you got some really angry lesbian type red-haired woman. You're like, okay, I see what's going on. Well, it's true. We'll talk more about her character in a little bit, but then you get the guy talking, and you see the Spectre ring on his pinky, and he's holding the cat. You're like, okay, now it's on. We're not going to the Bond stuff. We're getting the setup for the movie. And I think this whole opening thing is just, I still love watching it to this day. What do you think about it?
I think we need to address that this woman, I don't know what her real name is. I didn't mark it down. She's number 3. The guy there is definitely, he's number 5. That's what they refer to him as, I'm pretty sure. But he's devised a plan, and what they go over is that will certainly end James Bond. And I really enjoy this next part, where they go over to the Spectre headquarters, where Donald Grant is getting a massage currently. And,
yes, he is.
Yes. And number 3 is quickly impressed, and she throws a punch straight into his stomach, and he just stands his ground right there. And she's definitely sold. But
yeah, she's got the brass knuckles on. She's treating him like a piece of meat, and it's like, this woman mean business. And and then when they're walking along the grounds there, and you can see where they're practicing their terrorist type activities and all that. This is something to be revisited, at least in Moonraker, if not a few other Bond movies too. Yeah, it's a great scene. I agree with you.
Yeah, you know what? I enjoy going right into the next one too, because this movie it does move quickly into each thing, and we finally meet Tatiana. She's the Russian op that believes 3 is still
friend. Oof. Sorry, go ahead. I'm admiring the natural beauty of the long lingering shots here of Istanbul, Constantinople for the old folk.
Why isn't it Constantinople anymore? I don't know. Moving on, Tatiana is still convinced number 3 is working for the Russians. And so she's going forward with a plan that number 3 is pushing, that they need to sabotage Bond. And quickly she agrees. And there's this weird moment. It's almost kind of homoerotic for him, because she's like rubbing her shoulders. Aren't you a beautiful young woman? You'll do quite nicely.
Yeah, full on dyke. I mean, she's treating her like meat too. I mean, well, here's the thing. Again, early 60s, this is the USSR. And so the Cold War is on full effect. So this is your spy thing, and that's one thing I really think is great about this episode, is that you have this. So you got Tatiana Romanov, the blonde, who's just another clerk worker. She kind of gets involved in this because you really can't say no, because like number 3 says, you will be shot. And the way she talks is basically how, if you guys are familiar with Austin Powers, where Austin Powers number 2 would talk, where she goes, and you will be shot. That immediately go back to here, Rosa Klebb. She's the one in charge of this whole thing. And she's a mean bitch, and she does it so good. You're like, I like this. This is a great setup. And they're not rushing through it either. You get the scene of Tatiana walking through the back streets of Istanbul till she gets there, and she's just naive. She's a young, beautiful woman with only 3 lovers. They've got the complete dossier on her entire life, which she gets a little triggered by, but she understands what her role is. And hey, thank you, communism. You'll get nothing and like it, and if you don't, then you won't be around. It's just, that's how it was, and people might be triggered today climbing about those things, but it's exactly what it is, and that's why she was compelled to do it. Besides, Bond's super hot, so she's like, yeah, I guess I could screw him.
Well, yeah, they're not rushing through it; they're rushing through it. And speaking of Bond, that's finally where we head. So Bond is with Sylvia Trench, who was in the first movie, and they're on the side of this river right here, and they are enjoying themselves a nice little picnic. And he quickly gets a call from his car. He has a car phone, and M is trying to reach him. And he says he'll be there within the next hour as Sylvia's coming over. And he's like, you just got here. I didn't see you for 6 months. And so he's like, better make that an hour and a half, and then puts the phone away. And there's a neat shot where he's opening up the front of the car, and that's where we see her like grab a hold of him. But quickly it transitions to the office. Do you want to go ahead and take the serious side of this now?
This is I like the simplicity of a lot of the set pieces, which would get very busy and messy, I think, later on in Bond films. We've got a long way to kind of get into that. But I always loved the big boss setup here. Of course, he meets Moneypenny, he throws his hat on. It's the first time we see it. And I have to say this right off the bat when he comes in. I may have mentioned it in Dr. No, but definitely in this, Sean Connery's tailor, his dress is just impeccable. His suits aren't cluttery. He's got the right color combinations that they fit well. In 90-95% of movies, you get the wrong colors that wash out people's faces. You should be looking at their face, not their actual clothes. And the whole thing about Bond and his style and his elegance is legit. And, people used to go to sporting events wearing suits a lot. People used to be a lot more slimmer and cared more about their physical appearance and the way they dress. And it's certainly from 60 years ago true, because he's here with M, and they're going over the facts of the case. And one thing I mentioned last episode, I'll recite again here, and that's this. You got to have somebody that can put Bond in his place, because Bond is one of those guys that he likes to break things. That's his job. He's got to figure out, what do I need to do? How do I get things done? And so you've got to have somebody that's firm and disciplined. And his boss here, even though he's got, kind of like this brownish looking suit or whatever, it totally works for him and his believability, minus the bow tie, of course, because you don't believe anybody with a bow tie. It's just a great exchange here too, because you definitely get the feeling that Bond is not God. He's just the agent you want to be if you're watching this as a guy. And he gets the picture of her, and he realizes what he must do. He must sleep with this beautiful blonde and be very good in bed to convince her to get the Lektor device, a coding cipher that they need. And of course, before he can go off, he has to get some tools, because this is the very first film that we're going to see Q in. And the thing about Q coming in, he's straight to the point, no screwing around, no quips. We know that they're going to have great chemistry later on. Of course, this turns out to be where every gadget he gets is going to get used, and Bond will find a way to use it. And I'm gonna state this for the case going forward. I don't care for that. I love Q, and I love him maybe getting a gadget here and there, but I'm not into the gadgets per se as a spy thing. I like the spy
Really?
element. I've never been a gadget guy, and I like sports cars, but I don't like the sports cars as a gadget that Bond overindulges in later on. No, I do not like it. It's just, it breaks my sense of realism with it, and makes me not like the character as much. That's not Bond's fault. That's just the way they chose to do it. Now, something like this with the briefcase that's got some hidden money and a weapon in it, he's got the sniper rifle, I think, and a certain way to open it. I'm cool with that because that's not whatever. And yes, gadgets are a part of things. And 60 years ago, electronics was so much more analog and bigger. This is more practical and suited for the mission. So it works for here. But he, again, Q's dressed very, very great in here too. Great British style too. But yeah, very quick introduction of somebody we'll be talking about a lot more of later on. Of course, Bond then leaves talking to Moneypenny. They have their nice little thing, and he writes the "From Russia to Love" with it on the photo. It's just a well done scene before they transition into him flying to Istanbul. What was your take?
The funny side note, because I designed the thumbnail for tonight. I was tempted to use that photo as the background, but it was just so much cleaner on the intro that I had to do that. And I think the darker tones actually helped it. I just wanted to go ahead and throw that out there. The scene's absolutely great. I agree with you down the line, maybe, but right here, I think, but like you said, it's one piece of technology that he's getting to help him out, and it shows that he has a little more to learn. I know we like to think that he's just able to solve everything on his own, but the idea that he has things along the way that he has to be given, here's a little assistance, actually is something I enjoy. And absolutely. I love that the title is there. It's just like in the first one when the file for Dr. No comes up.
Yes.
It's just right there. It works out
right there on the label. You're like, damn it, that's so smart. That's so easy to do. Why don't more movies do that?
And you know what? It's great. The next scene, because James lands and he gets picked up by a driver. Obviously, he's being tailed, and he actually asks the driver, is it common for you to get tailed around here? And the driver makes a joke saying, oh yeah. Well, we have a understanding around here. They tail us and we tail them, and it all works out in the end.
Yeah, I really, really like the scene, and a lot of Bond films, again, talking about the whole globetrotting spy thing. When he lands, I don't think of this as actually a joke. I think of it as the guy's kind of smart, which we find out he is, because he's the son of somebody that's going to get a lot of talking time here shortly. But it gives you, again, another emphasis of the whole spy game that's going on. Well, we watch them, they watch us. This is what's going on. But of course, the movie being almost 2 hours long is not in any rush to not give you about a minute or two's worth of time of letting this develop, where you get some great shots of the car driving by and the camera's focusing on the car driving on whatever road, but yet you get to see a lot of the Istanbul countryside too. And of course, it's not all shiny, glassy objects, okay? It's just different neighborhoods. You can see the really old buildings, some landmarks in there too, birds flying around. Stuff like this, to me, as a Bond fan, I really like it because it gives you that sense of feeling that you're there. You're not always, inside behind a desk or with a gun shooting people. You're doing spy stuff. And again, Cold War stuff, this is a big deal. And again, to talk about how I'm a lot older than you, and so it's interesting that we have maybe a different viewpoint from our age perspective bringing it in here. I know people personally that had been involved in elements like this, as it were, growing up. So it was always interesting to hear how they got to that point. And when he's following the driver around and he's going through the little bazaar and all that too, and they go through whatever, and they meet Ali Karim, which happens to be the driver's father. It's just nice because you feel like you're with Bond being transported to that too. Beautiful woman in a hat and a white dress walks out of the office. I mean, this movie's got some gorgeous women in it, flat out, just outstanding. And this guy's got a great set piece too. This is the type of man cave, and I hate the term man cave. This guy's got the office that you should work in as a guy. He's got a balcony out to the outside. He's got fresh flowers in there. He's got cigars. He's got everything. And him and Bond have a nice little conversation where Bond again, learns, hey, this isn't my element. What's the deal going on here? And Karam kind of tells him all about it. So again, no shooting, no goofy kind of stuff. It's a great setup. I love how it takes its time here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And how Kareem Bey, that's his name. He quickly tells him that your girl's probably said she's going to get into contact with you. It might not go through. What I suggest you do is you enjoy your time and then just go home in a couple days. And it really does have that laid back kind of vibe until we quickly cut. And it's like a small scene, but we see Donald Blake, I believe that's what I said his name was. He has a man tied up in the back of his car. And we are quick. He's on his tail throughout most of this. And I really do enjoy how he's able to keep his stealthy, keep on his trail in such a stealthily way.
Yeah. And here's another thing too, that now that I'm thinking about it, it's not been a conscious effort, but now I'm going, I remember so many of these. Now I'm really going to pay attention to them. For some reason, in Dr. No, when Bond checked in at the hotel there, the little small one, his music played indiscriminately for no reason. It's totally inappropriate for that scene. It's bad editing. I don't know what you want to call it. It didn't fit, but I loved it and I always remembered it. Here, for some reason, he's checking in, and I love it when you take a minute or two at a Bond movie to check into what room that you have. It's cool because, it's the expensive room. It's always the top end model, basically, usually. And again, going back to the spy stuff, you see him take a moment to check his room out, see what's going on. And again, electronics being different now than what they were, you could do what he's doing here, totally believable. And of course, you find out that he's being spied on a little bit with the house manager and the lady up front who's also gorgeous. It's kind of like, I just think this is really cool. And Red Graham, who is Robert Shaw's character, the guy that we saw in the opening Gambit, they cut away from Bond here to see him driving past the embassy. So this embassy is going to be very important because the guy standing at the embassy walks across and talks to somebody. And so there's a lot of spy stuff going on that Bond's not even aware of, but we as a viewer are. And that's pretty cool until we see what happens next. But your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, no, I agree. His entire time in the what I really enjoy is whenever he gets into the hotel, first thing he starts doing is the same thing he did last time. He starts checking the area. He's checking for bugs. And when he's going to his phone, that's where he picks it up. He scans it. Definitely hears one in there. So he goes ahead and he calls to the front, and he's saying that this room won't do. I need another one. And the people listening in quickly tell the woman at the front desk that there's only the bridal suite available. And he quickly says, okay, I'll take a look at it. It might suit me better. And he stays on the line as she hangs up. And then he hears another click because the people listening in on the line were also hung up. So he's well aware of his situation there.
Yeah. It's just, like I said, when you're in another country, you want to get the feel that you're there. You don't want to feel like you're just rushing in saying, okay, we got to go, to 3 different locations, just so one thing and that's it. And I just feel like they've been very patient with it here too, because we see Karam here and he's in his office looking at stuff, and we get the shot of his woman laying out on the bed or whatever like that. She's like, you don't like me anymore? You don't want to play? And it just shows that the man runs the household over there in Istanbul, because she is popping out of everywhere in this peach dress. It's insane.
The only girl on the thumbnail that isn't actually near Bond at all in this episode.
Yeah. Well, it's significant because there's an attack and he has to deal with it, and Bond happens to show back up and he explains, these things kind of go on. And what made the scene neat?
You could say that this woman saved his life because she kept saying,
I know that. That's to be equitable in 1963 terms. But no, it's cool because he's like, hey, James, it's cool. let me show you what's going on. Bond's like, okay. He walks them downstairs through these aqueducts so they could go spy on the Soviet consulate. And I'm like, this is just really cool. Again, spy stuff. We're about 45 minutes into the film, so we're about, let's say a third of the way in. We think we've seen all the major characters too. And I think it's a hard line to not be submissive to Bond, where Bond's leading a particular scene, and I think it's hard to overpower him, but to be as equal is the challenging task for any actor or I think writer. And in this case, Karim here, he just does a fantastic job. They've got this old submarine, a magnifying glass that looks in, and so they can see stuff that's going on, but they can't hear. And it's neat because Bond's checking it out, and we know Bond still has to meet the girl, but he sees a nice pair of legs. That's like a Bond comment or whatever. They drive around a little bit at night, and they're going to this gypsy camp for contact. And meanwhile, we'll stop just short of the gypsy incident. We do see that Red Grant is basically making sure. He's basically acting as Bond's kind of like guardian angel, if you will, because he needs Bond to get the device so he can then steal it from him. So enough stuff going on. It's flowing very well. No real big shootouts. No really dumb stunt kind of Jason Bourne crap. Pure spy stuff. Well, go ahead.
Well, one thing that we forgot to mention as they're heading to the gypsy camp is that Karim says the reason why he has this car set aside is because he has the one they came in with two dummies in it, so that way anyone that would be tailing them would be following that car instead.
Yeah. Now, the gypsy camp thing, we get to see some gypsy dancers. It's at night. I know in some of the popular tourist areas here in Central Florida, they have gypsy dancers and all that. And it's always nice to see a professional at their craft, whatever you want to call it. It's 10 times better over in Europe where it's authentic and whatnot, in my opinion. But that being said, they show you something that is unique culturally to that area. And of course, there ends up being an attack on the gypsy camp. Even though these two women are supposed to fight, about stuff, we're supposed to see the old gypsy ways or something. I'm like, I appreciate the fact that they put this in. And so you do have a little bit of an action sequence here with some shootouts and guns and whatnot too. But, it's an entertaining scene, I think. What do you make of it?
Yeah, no, I really, if you mean the before the fight breaks out, and I don't mean between the girls. Yeah, absolutely. You see the gypsy dancer, and she's going around against Bond. Bond's having a swell time, and then Karim leans in and says, as he's translating, and Bond is like, at one point, because the girls are there, and they're spewing shit at each other. He's like, I don't think I need subtitles for this one. But I really did enjoy the build up, because they're supposed to be fighting because they're both in love with the same man, something like that. Mm-hmm. And this was to settle it. And no matter what, Bond can interrupt. But there's quickly a shot in the background. It seems that, what was his name? Krilicu, something like that, who was at the embassy that they peeked in on. He is trying to assassinate Karim. And so, as it's going around, Bond is quickly getting some hits in there. And at one point, he's about to be stabbed by one of Krilicu's men. And that's when Grant does pull his guardian angel kind of move, and he shoots the guy. And Bond, he takes a look because he's wondering who did that. But quickly, he's not able to figure it out because they have to move right along. And that's when, man, I wish I could remember exactly how to pronounce his name. Krilicu retreats.
Yes.
And so the fight is brought to an end, and the gypsy leader is grateful to Bond. And that's when Bond asks So what's going to happen with the girls' fight? And that's when the leader laughs, and he says that he's going to let Bond handle it.
Yeah, it's there's definitely some allusion a little bit to Bond's getting a lot more tail than he did before. And again, male fantasy, and that's fine. Whatever. Again, Karim here is just kind of like the way he talks. I don't know this guy if he was, acted or whatever in over in Europe, but it just has a way of his delivery and the way the words are written for him feels very authentic to me. He's not somebody I go, oh, that's somebody who's such a great actor. Listen to the way they manufacture the accent. It sounds almost real. I mean, it seems very authentic. And so I appreciated that with it too, because after this, again, Bond's trying to get this Lektor device. He's got to have sex with this hot one. It's a honeypot thing is what it is. And everybody knows it from either side. It's just that the bad dudes who are playing the Ruskies think that they're 1 or 2 steps ahead, as it were. But right after that, you get to where the Kirilenko guy, they're going to assassinate him. And so, Karim had been wounded in the battle, and so Bond kind of lets him use his sniper rifle to take him out. And this is, I think, again, the second film. It's the first time we've seen it. We get a quick, crash zoom into at night the person coming out of the mouth on the giant billboard, which we would see in later Bond films. We'd see something very similar to it, but this is the first time we see it, and they get shot. But just Karim talking about how he wants to be the one to pull the trigger and all that. It's just kind of neat, and you feel the not bromance, but you feel how they're two competent professionals from 2 different parts of the world bonding instantly, no pun intended, and Bond even lets him use his shoulder as a steady device there for it. So it's kind of neat, but again, we're getting close to where we're almost halfway through this film, and it's just been a lot of spy stuff, and I like that. It doesn't have to be all action-packed. Bond does get back to his hotel room, and then he senses that somebody's there, and of course, waiting in bed is
Tatiana.
Oh my goodness. And it's just in that take me pose, and she's got that black little thing going around her neck. My goodness. Ladies used to wear that back in the 80s. Not so much these days, but they shake hands before they start getting the stuff. And she's not being
trying
slutty.
To get right to work. He's trying to get information.
Well, he's tired. He's had a full work day, and so he's a little drained. So he knows he has to sex her up, and he wants to get the Lektor. So he's got a job to do, son. So he's got to get on it. And she's just gorgeous.
Listen.
If he's a poor lover here, it doesn't work.
Rearranging. He's quickly convinced by her, but she's saying, "Do you really want to talk about this now?"
Well, yeah.
There's a time and a place. That's pillow talk.
They don't make this a sex scene. Yes, they're getting ready to have relations. Okay, there's no nudity in it. She's dressed very classy, even though we know exactly what's going on. It's not a trashy sort of scene where she's thrown up against the wall or anything like that at all. And yeah, he's got to let her know what he wants and all that too. But of course, the real interesting thing isn't how beautiful she is. It's the fact that they're getting filmed as we get a dissolve to end the scene. Yeah. And it's the fact that, there's more than one angle that Spectre's trying to play here.
I don't know. I only saw one camera. That's one angle right there.
Well, I know you're joking, but the idea is that they can make a sex tape to, leverage MI6 or whatever with it, and it's neat. But yeah, it's a neat scene. You want to go ahead and take the next scene?
Yes. Early the next morning, Tatiana is about to drop off the floor plan that Bond asked for the night before, because that's really what he needs. He talked to Karim about it before, but he said there's no way he could get it. But Tatiana, obviously working at the embassy, has some access. And so she takes it there, and the man who's been following Bond, not Grant, but another man that we've seen since the airport, goes to intercept. But he's killed by Donald Grant.
Red. Red Grant.
I thought it was Donald.
I believe it's Red. You're talking Shaw's character.
Yeah.
Red Grant.
Blondie.
Ginger. I guess it depends
Really?
on how good your print is.
I don't know. I was maybe not. But anyway, Bond does get the plans, and he takes them to Kareem. They have it out, and Kareem doesn't like this at all, and says that this woman has Bond eating out of her hand, basically. So
He calls Bond out on it.
yeah.
And he's not mad at all. He's just saying, "Hey, bro, what's up?"
Come on, man. You got to get your thing straight. And from there, Bond quickly follows through, same day, I'm pretty sure, to a boat where Tatiana is there. And so he goes to Tatiana and he wants some information. He has a machine, he's recording, and she doesn't want to be there in public, but quickly they drop the people watching them, and they're recording the conversation, and it shows over to M, who has the recording. And as it's going on, she's saying, "Oh, Bond, won't you make love to me once we're in England?" And he's like, "Yes, every night, darling." And he's about to bring up a mission with M, and that's when M stops it. And this next is a small piece, because Moneypenny is going to listen to the rest once the story. And so she's listening to the tape again as Bond's about to explain. And then we hear M's voice. Because I'm sure you're listening, Miss Moneypenny, send this note to Bond.
Yeah, going back just a step here too. You know, after they make sweet love, Bond drives his point home about what he needs and wants from her. They see her, you see her walking by herself, and it's the next day. And again, you get some of the popular monuments in the background, and it's just a nice shot because, like I say, it's a character in a way. Bond is having to perform his duties there, and a lot of these scenes they're having that. I forget how you pronounce it, Hagia Sophia or whatever, the domey looking thing with the spires, for lack of a better term. And a lot of these scenes in the background to remind you, yes, we filmed it here and it's all that. But the thing is that she's dropping off some info in a case there that Bond picks up. And of course it's a layout of the building because they still have to get the device, and she's working with them. So she's giving us some info, and it's kind of like, okay, you banged me really good. Here's a show of faith. I'll give you some info that was hard to get. And yeah, we do see Red with the save, as it were. And when Karen calls him out on it, again, Bond's got a great suit on, everything matches. Again, it's very detective-y. It's very mature kind of adult stuff going on with them discussing it. It's no, oh my God, we're going to kill everybody on the planet, this, that, or like that. It's apolitical in a sense, in that it's just two people that are pros trying to figure out what's going on. And again, you get some more great shots. And when they meet on the boat, like you're saying, and it's dangerous, he backs away. And his camera that he has is really a recording device, and they talk. And it's just a nice scene. It's very timeless. It makes you feel like you're back there in the 60s, everything going on. You watch the background, whether it's back projected or not, doesn't matter. This is what I think of when I think of Sean Connery and I think of James Bond. These kinds of scenes here, it goes really well. He has to be a little bit harder because all of a sudden she's a little clingy, because Bond might have been a little too good at his job, if you know what I'm saying. But once they get the information, I did think, well, how quickly were they able to get that tape, and how quickly they get it back? That kind of broke me for a little bit, but no matter. But transitioning to a newer scene, you get to see where there's like this smoke bomb that's going to go off, I think, at 3:00, and Bond happens to be in the right place at the right time. And you see, I'm going to call it, for lack of a better terms, kind of like a heist where, he goes in there and he gets the Lektor device, and it's all about how they can get out and get on the Orient Express. But they go through like some back tunnels and stuff. So I wouldn't call this like a major action scene. It's certainly not by today's standards, but I like it because it's just enough. It's like, let's get in and out with the chaos. Here's how we can do it. And he spent an hour's worth of this whole movie planning for this particular point and then the getaway. So I kind of liked it. It's not overdone. There's some chaos on the streets. You get a lot of the street level vendors and stuff, which whenever Bond movies do that, it's fantastic. And then they get ready to board the Orient Express. And so before we actually talk about what happens once they get on in the rest of the movie, anything you want to interject with?
No. You've gone ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Chug us along.
Well, everybody's done their fair amount of traveling in the world. I've done a little bit myself. I've had some friends in Europe and been there, and there's nothing more romantic than being on a train. By romantic, a lot of times I think people forget that it's not lovey-dovey in terms of a notion. It's like a recall to like something in your past or whatever. It's something about it. And so the fact that a big part of this movie is on a train is awesome. And the fact that it's the Orient Express, which is the train of trains, is even more awesome. So I really love what's going on with this too. Good evening, T. Good to see you as well. Jim's got a bunch of others above this one here too. Yeah, and Jim, that's one thing we're going to talk about. Just interjecting with some of the comments on our stream. One of the best things about Bond films is arguing about and fighting them and ranking them from the different actors and then subsets and all that too, which when we launched the Xtreme Movie Show, we did some brief comments on it, but we wanted to go through each film and then after each set of actors kind of do the same thing too. So yeah, some might be more rewatchable than others, but it's just fun talking about it. It's not, well, you're wrong. It's just kind of how it is. But yeah, this one, like I say, I think it's just an improvement. And the big part here when they get on the train is, again, the way it's shot. They're in their compartment. They've got their fake IDs and all that too. Bond just wants to get the hell out of there with the device, but he's got to bring her along because she's defecting. Again, something with trains, it's just awesome. And so we know that there's going to be a lot of stuff going on here because we see that Red Grant made his way on this train. So we know he's going to make his move too. So Bond's putting up the act, stringing her along basically about stuff. He brings her some, classy lingerie so he can bone her while he's after reading the paper and stuff too. And Karam's on her with it as well. And they meet and they go over stuff, but it won't be long before things start turning bad. So before we start getting into some of those things, what's your take on being on a train and what they're doing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's in fact a lot better than where we were in the last one. While I do enjoy a tropical climate, we're exposed to tropical climates all the time. It's nice to have a different sort of feel. And this, like I said before, this is like a little taste of the world through Bond's eyes. And so going on the Orient Express, it keeps things intimate, but exposes us to...
Intimate's a good word.
There we go.
I agree.
And moving on from here, they are, in fact, followed onto the train once they get on, and they're pretty well aware of it. Him and Kareem comes over and hands them their passports as she's going to get changed, and he says that these are your new identities, but we have a problem. There's a man, he was just listening to your room a few moments ago, where we're going to have to go handle that. So they quickly go to the Russian agent's car, they knock, and then they get him in there, tie him up. And he goes ahead and tells Bond, because they have a meeting set up. Where was it? Zagreb, I believe.
Zagreb, yep, Yugoslavia.
And he says, I'll handle him. You go ahead back to Tatiana. And Tatiana, she's changed a few times. And
she looks so beautiful. I mean, she's such a natural, gorgeous beauty in here. My God.
Oh, absolutely. It's... and whenever he gets back there, quickly, she's... they're enjoying their time on the train. But quickly, there's a problem. There's been a murder on the Orient Express.
Not murder. Not a murder on the Orient Express.
I know. Who could have expected it?
Maybe she should have called it Murder on the Nile. All these murder and death interchangeable novels and books and movies. Yeah, T's bringing that up too with Agatha Christie. Yeah, Death on the Nile, Murder on the Orient Express. Yeah, and of course, backyard moments with the comments so far about how all this train talk is chugging right along smoothly. Let me ask you this, Pixel. Did you notice while we're talking about the train? It's like being on a train, unless you're going to the bar cart or something, or you're meeting some peeps, or you go to the end one
Some
where
peeps?
people.
Did you just seriously say meeting some peeps?
Some people jump on a train and go to the very last cart, knowing they can go the farthest distance before they're checked for tickets. Back in the day, I'm not saying I've done that, but it was a thing to do, and there people would be crowded, 8 to 10 people in a small little room, unlike the front of the train. So here's the thing: on a train, most of the time you just don't see other people. And it's like that here. You don't really see that many other people too. So that intimacy thing that you mentioned before, I think is right on, because it turns out that the agent that followed them on and Karam, they get murdered by Red, and he makes them kind of look like they killed each other. And then once Bond discovers their bodies, he's like, hey, it's getting real now. It's getting real crazy. I need to do something with it. And here's the thing. Like I say, we're about an hour and a half through the movie. We know that from the opening scene, before we even see the real James Bond, that Red Grant, the assassin there for Spectre, knows his stuff. He doesn't talk a lot, doesn't say too much. Actions speak louder than words. It's the way you should do stuff. There's even a little stop and lay over here where Bond is supposed to be meeting somebody, and Red pretends to be that person, which Bond figures out because now his senses are kind of heightened with the dangerousness of the situation. It gets to be an interesting little kind of cat and mouse thing here as they get on it. So to me, I like it, the train stopping at night so Bond can get off so he can talk to the agent, but it's just, it feels like a complete spy movie that has a character named James Bond in it at this point. And it's fantastic up to here. And then, after this, we'll talk about like the last 20, 30 minutes and how it kind of wraps up. But as things are progressing, how is this feeling for you as a movie?
We're missing one scene here, and that's when Bond actually gets a moment to talk to Kareem's other son, because this man has so many sons, and explains that Kareem's dead. He got. He gives him the rundown.
He got put down, erased, deleted.
And he leaves a message for him. But when he goes in Donald Blake, and his name is Donald, I looked it up. That is his first name. Not Blake though. It's Grant. Red Grant. He takes the position of Nash, and it happened so smoothly I almost didn't notice it. I had to and rewind a second. I was like, what? And he took Nash's place. And I'm absolutely loving this movie. This movie is absolutely I think a million times better than the first, and I enjoyed the first one, but this one it's already elevated itself way beyond. And I think it is because of what you said. It does feel more like a spy flick rather than an action flick, like it should.
Well, and the thing too is Spectre that we get a little bit of more fleshing out in this episode. It's not a lot, but it's enough, and it's enough that they set the wheels in motion for this plan where we don't keep cutting back to the guy that's got the cat on his lap sort of thing, where it seems kind of silly or whatever. And of course, things get parodied so much. A lot of people think of James Bond, they go to Austin Powers, and it's a shame because you're like, okay, this agency is somehow getting two sides to play against each other in the middle of a Cold War where things are really tense. Spy Who Came In From the Cold's a fantastic movie. It's one of the best spy movies out there. This is certainly not on that level, but that is phenomenal. And it's hard to really capture like that movie did in those books. But this Bond film gets very close to it, and it's a piece of its time. So some of the stuff may not make sense. Borders do change with wars and over time too, but you get the old pre-Indiana Jones thing where you even see a map of where the Orient Express is going, and it's one of those old school maps that somebody hand drew out, and it shows the moving and stuff. But Red Grant, he just has an intimidating facial expression about him, and he doesn't have to kill 20 million people to have credibility. He's, like we talked about before, physically and a figure that we can go, okay, he has credibility. And the opening scene was kind of cute with him, strangling James Bond allegedly, and that's supposed to be what we're foreshadowing towards, which we know is not going to happen, but it's believable. You believe this is a guy that can do it. He's the right man for the job. You can see why he's doing it. He doesn't have to talk. He's like the shark that he would be hunting, later on in Jaws. It's really great. So
he's a natural born hunter.
He is. He's an alpha. I mean, you feel like he's on James Bond level. He's not some goober jobber that's going to get whacked really easy. Competent. That elevates Bond. That elevates him. That elevates Spectre. That elevates everybody involved in it. That's smart writing. That's what you do in these kinds of scenes. That's the business you're trying to put over. There's always some confusion when you do have changeovers in places like that too. And I think this movie does a good job of not being quiet or boring when you're on a train. It's kind of deliberate, but here you get some stuff, and then you get to see the great stuff about spy movies. You get to see a lot of voyeurism that you see in this film. You get a lot of chasing and following people. Now you get the cat and mouse, whereas you get closer to each other, and you see them do that because he meets them for dinner, and Bond's checking them out, and he's dressed in a really nice suit too. It's totally believable. And when they're at dinner on the train or whatever, and train dining, some of the best dining experiences I've had. I would just say this now, particularly in Spain. Spain's a wonderful place for food. Where they're at here, she's kind of pissy. She's giving Bond some attitude. So Bond's like, finally, I'm going to be off the hook once I get her. Huh?
You can't blame her because he did kind of like smack her around there, whatever. He was looking for information after Kareem was dead.
Well, hey. He doesn't know where it's coming from. You got to look out for number one. I mean, survival is rule number one. And you know what? They both know what the situation between them and what they're doing. She's not lying to him. She's having sex with him to get him hooked and all that. And he knows that. So we know that that's the spy game. Honeypots still go on today, so this is nothing new. And she's also somebody that's supposedly trying to defect, so she has to go along with it whether she likes it or not. So she can't do anything to get Bond to kill her or anything. So yeah, I agree with you. She should be pissy. But again, even if she is, it puts the focus where it needs to be here, and that's on Bond. And how is he going to get out of this situation? So they're having dinner, the three of them or whatever, and it's interesting because in here, she gets drugged and passes out, and then they go to meet. Bond pulls his gun out, and he's got he's got a line in here that it's not just a one-liner like with stupid things that we would come to love, especially with Roger Moore. We get a line where he talks about how he knew how he was going to be the bad guy because he ordered the wrong wine with the fish. And it's tremendous. It's like, Bond is a connoisseur of finer things in life, and he gets knocked out. And then the whole kind of, how do you want to call this?
Well, here's
the game that comes into play with his suitcase. So I'll go ahead and stop.
Yeah, because Bond has the gun on him, and Nash says, wait a minute. I was just knocking her out. She's not poison or anything. That's what I put in the drink. And here, let me show you the plan. And he pulls out papers, and Bond puts the gun down to actually go look. And that's when he does get the upper hand, knocks Bond out. Mm-hmm. And then he has Bond pretty much in a seat. And he has the gun on him. And that's when Red Grant drops the act. And Bond asks, so this is all Smersh's plan. And he knows nothing of Smersh. And that's how Bond figures out that Spectre is behind this.
Yep.
He figures out the plot quickly. And they kept him alive for the machine all along. And then they made a plot for his death with letter and the sex tape. And that's when Bond's like, okay, well, can I have a cigarette? And he's like, no. And he's like, what if I give you sovereigns? I have them in my suitcase right here. And so he goes ahead and he says, well, I have some more in my other one. And he says that he's going to go and get him, except this is when Donald feels like something's up. And this is when he's like, no, I'll handle this one. So he goes to open it. He doesn't know about the gas, and it releases. He's stunned for a second, and that's when it breaks out into a fight. The lights shut off, and throughout all of this, it's a little dark, so it's a little harder to see, which is a little unfortunate. And poor Tatiana is just in bed, passed out, while they're fighting over her.
Yeah.
Donald, at one point, tries to choke him, but that's when Bond is able to hit the knife from the briefcase, and he stabs Donald. And that's when he gets it, and Red Grant is no more.
The only negative thing I'm going to say about this is that it just seems a little too convenient or easy that he's going to fall for the gold sovereigns trap, and it's in here, and it's just. I felt a little let down by it. That being said, I didn't really need to have a big, huge fight or anything cool like that. It doesn't need to be Jason Bourne or whatever. So it is what it is and all that too. But whenever I think of this movie, I think of them being on the train and how it takes forever to get on the train and how the train's a big part of it. But we do have the ending part, last 15 minutes or so, whatever, too, is that, Grant's got his own way of escaping too with the Lektor device, but Bond ends up basically appropriating that for himself too, and they're being chased by Spectre agents and all that, and they're trying to get towards the end. And here's the thing with Bond, for some reason eventually they try to overdo it with the action, which again I'm not a fan of. It should be a spy film, in my opinion, what I would prefer. I understand that's not how it is, and it's kind of neat to see them on the countryside, whatnot, but I could care less about the action scenes, to be honest with you. I did like how, though, there's some loose endings to it, and that when they go on the boat and they're getting towards the end and they feel like they're celebrating, we get to see we get some fallout with the Spectre bad guys before we get the actual final scene with number 3, as you called her, Rosa Klebb, in it too. So let's just pause here, let you catch up to where I'm at, because I'm skipping over a lot of the action because I was like, I could care less about it. It didn't make me like it or hate it.
You didn't like him taking out the helicopter that was after?
The more I think about it, the more I'll get mad, and I'm trying not to be, because I've enjoyed everything up till that scene. Yeah, let me take my single shot rifle and take down the helicopter.
Okay, but you have to at least appreciate him getting off, handling the truck driver that is supposed to be meeting Grant. He takes him up, ties him up, and he's basically pulling him along as he's driving with Tatiana. We'll skip over the helicopter for your sake, but they do get to the boat, and as they are motoring away, that's when 5 and 3 go to number 1. We still haven't seen number 1. They don't show number 1. But number 5 is trying to throw off the blame, saying it's all number 3's fault. And my plan was perfect. Yeah, my plan was perfect. She couldn't execute it. And that's when 5 says, number 1 says, yeah, we don't accept failure here. And he presses a button, and number 5 is killed. And number 3 is just so grateful to be alive at that moment. You could see the relief on her face, but it doesn't last long. She says that they still have time to get the device. And that's when we go quickly back to Bond and Tatiana. The boat goes to try to intercept him, and Bond's doing his best to avoid him. He has his little captain's cap on as they're going. And they use the barrels that they have strapped to the boat, and he drops them and quickly fires he's poked holes so that they're leaking, or I
Yeah.
believe they shot him, so they're
Yeah.
leaking. And he shoots a flare at them once he has them all out there by all the boats chasing them, and they ignite. Boom, blows it up. And that's when we quickly transition as they're in a room. They've arrived, and things seem easygoing from here.
It's, you know, the action, like I said, I could care less about it. And I thought it was interesting that they didn't show number one's face and all that too, because of course you can have different actors playing him, and at least they show him petting the cat. But you're right, when they go to whack the chess master for being a complete failure, I thought it was kind of funny too, because, you know, he had such a great scene, and you're like, okay, I don't know who this organization is, but it's legit. And here's the thing, everybody were acting like adults and professionals. They were trying to steal the Lektor device because they want to turn around and sell it to the Russians and make money. So it's, again, they're trying to play sides. Why? Because they have to get resources. Why? So they can unleash their plans. And that's what it kind of comes down to in a lot of situations. What are the resources? Who has control of them? And that's where, you know, the communism thing versus the capitalism thing. People will argue about what they like or what's right and fair and moral and just and all this kind of stuff. But you saw this get revisited in some James Bond movies later on too, because eventually, of course, the USSR would end up folding in like 89 or whatever it was when the wall came down. And to not get too political on it, it was interesting because here you see an organization that says, hey, we're acting like communists, but we're not going to take failure. Boom, you're done. And to your point, she is so scared out of her pants. She's like, okay, I'm going to go do it, because she knows she's going to get whacked. And she was the hard one that rose up the ranks. That's why she was up where she was at. But now she's got to go produce. So, hey, don't tell me, show me. And so we forgot to mention that she had the really cool knife thing in the front of her shoe, right? That was her thing. And it's kind of silly, but I kind of liked it. It's not totally ridiculous. But again, Bond's back in Venice. He's got the sex tape. He's got the Lektor. So it's time for a little nookie. He can kind of wind down or whatever. You get a beautiful shot of downtown Venice, which Venice is not big if you've been, the cathedral and the St. Mark's Square or whatnot. So it's just beautiful. They let it linger, and she's dressed up in a beautiful thing. Her hair's up. She's just naturally gorgeous. But we see her come in, Rosa Klebb, and she's acting like she's the maid. I don't know how she found out where they were going to stand out. I'm gonna let that go. And Bond's in her doing her thing. He's getting dressed, so he's totally ignoring her, because Bond never likes the help that shows him the rooms. Generally, I've noticed that. I like that. And then you see Tatiana there, and then she pulls the gun out. And again, this is just where you stretch credibility. Just take the gun and shoot him. Boom. You know, and it's the whole Scott Evil thing saying it. Hey, Dad, you want to bond? I get my gun. You know, we can go get them together. Boom, bam, done. We can bond. No, Scott, you really just don't get it. I'm looking at this scene and I'm like, because it's just an excuse for Bond to struggle with a woman, but then Tatiana helps out by actually shooting her.
Well, it comes on in as she's about to shoot Bond. She wanted to make sure the device was out of there, which is why I can shrug it off so easily. She wants to make sure the device is out there, undamaged, everything. And as she's about to shoot, Tatiana bursts back in the room, pushes her. She drops the gun, and that's when it's hand to hand between number 3 and Bond. And Tatiana, you're right. She gets the gun and she's able to shoot her, and that's the end right there. And that's when we see them go next to each other, and quickly we transition to the song From Russia with Love as they're riding on a gondola together, and they're going forward as he's dropping the
sex tape
footage right into the water. Yeah. What is it with this is the second movie thus far, but both times they've had to end on the water.
Well, Bond is a Navy guy, if I recall correctly. He rode to the ranks of being a commander before he got recruited at MI5 and then MI6 or whatever. And I haven't read the Bond books since I was a teenager, and so watching this, there's definitely not going to be crossover because there's mixes of books in these movies and stuff there too. But Bond knows boats. Period. He does. He's self-sufficient, so he's supposed to be kind of like a badass in here. And that's the one thing about Connery. He looks like he can fight too. So I don't know. Maybe that's just a British thing. I guess. Who cares? It's romantic nonetheless because they finish in Venice, and we saw Venice early on. But Venice is always a winning combination in film. It's a dump. Let's be honest. If you've been in ghettos and bad parts of the world, Venice is a dump, but it does have its charm, and in the summer it can stink a little bit or whatever. But when you go there, it's one of the few places that you can feel the history around you, smell it, see it, whatever, and you're like, wow, this is Venice. And they're like, yeah. Some other places you go and you go, oh, this is that. And then you're like, okay, been there, done it, don't want to go back again. But Venice is one of those ones. And so it works. It's such an old city, one of the richest cities around, very important in world history and time. And so it's neat that Bond gets to do all this. You get the Orient Express, you get Venice. Lots to love about this film, not really a lot to hate or dislike about it. So I did notice at the end trailers, though, it did say James Bond will return in Goldfinger. So don't know if they did at the end of Dr. No, don't recall, but we're starting to get where Bond movies knew they were so successful because, again, this is a big hit. It's a monster smash hit. They knew they were going to be doing another one. And this was only 1 year after Dr. No. But yeah, overall, I got to say, Pixel, I like this one a lot. I think it edges out Dr. No for me, and I do like Dr. No. I really appreciate the spy stuff in here with Bond. I appreciate the globe-trotting, the patience this had that felt like a spy movie, which is what James Bond is supposed to be, not an action hero. That's going to be some of the issues I have later on. But for now, since you've not seen all the Bond films, and some of them you don't even really know hardly at all, like this one, that's why we chose to go through these one movie at a time. I think Johnny in chat was saying that he's not seen a lot too, so he's trying to learn. Johnny, I totally recommend watching them in order. Some things will make more sense later on, especially when they transition into other actors and stuff. That's how we're going to approach it. So probably in another week or so, we'll be doing Goldfinger, which a lot of people think is the gold standard of Bond films, if you will.
Well, yeah, like I said before, I haven't seen this in a couple of years, so getting to visit it already was great. And I do look forward to seeing Goldfinger. If I remember correctly, I really did enjoy that one. So we're going to have to wait and see when we can do that, though. But
spoiler alert. I think it's when we talk about Goldfinger, I will say it's not as good as these two films. And we'll save that for later. Okay. No, but please continue. Absolutely. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I for this film, I feel like it definitely improves where we went from with the first one.
Agreed.
I like the final act a whole lot better in this movie than Dr. No. And you know, maybe it's because it's not as mustache twirly as Dr. No actually was. And the villain is kept far away from Bond this entire time. We have somebody after him, but the actual bad guys, they're kept at bay, and everyone who faces off against them, well, they perish, of course, but they chose to go after James Bond, and I'm just looking forward to continuing.
Yeah, just double checking some of the comments before we close up to LK saying that this movie From Russia with Love is one of his top 5 Bond films. This is one of the Bond films I think that gets forgotten a lot because certain things jump to mind for certain reasons that stick out and they're memorable, and that's why people think of the movie. Zach's mentioned that he hasn't seen this film forever, and you know, Zach, I got to simply say that, you know, if we go to rank our Connery films in a few weeks, yeah, I don't know where this is going to rank, but I'll tell you, there's which ones you think are good, but there's also the ones that you can rewatch, and those are different to me, and it's hard to say that, but I agree with you, Pixel. I think they were finding their footing in the first film, Dr. No, and then here they were able to improve on some things. They were definitely patient about it, which I liked, and again, the whole globe-trotting thing seems to work as far as a spy thing. It feels like a spy movie, but just as a guy watching this film, you go, hey, he's got strong women. Bond's been helped out by lots of different characters, so it's definitely got a diverse, multicultural type of aspect to it that you could argue that's good, inclusive if you want to think of it like that. But it's just a fantasy for a guy. I mean, it's like, yeah, he really makes me want to be him. I want to dress up in a suit. I want to, you know, have people follow me around in the car and, you know, meet somebody local and all that too. It's cool, just cool stuff there too. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of good lines here too. Okay, was mentioned too, and you had some in here as well. And Backyard Moments, just trying to get in here as well. Yeah, the German assassin on a train is awesome. Yeah, all that too. Yeah, it's really fun stuff there too. So we're trying to advertise when we're doing the bonds because we don't have a set schedule for yet for you guys listening out there. So when we do post for the next one to do Goldfinger, obviously show up. We'll have a place of mine there too. Hopefully this will grow even a lot bigger because it is James Bond. A lot of people I see online talk about some stuff and look things up, but for Pixel being pretty much a first watch on a lot of them, it's going to be very interesting to see on it too. And to me, it's forcing me to revisit, God, has this movie really held up? Because I've not liked a lot of the newer Bonds. And Pixel, I know you haven't seen them all too, but let me ask you this as we close up: have you seen Goldfinger?
Yeah, I've seen. I like I said, I saw a bunch of the early ones a couple years ago, and I got up, I believe, to the guy that was Bond for one movie, and then he went away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting one to discuss because, again, spoiler alert, I think it's one of the best Bonds out of all of them where he gets married. I really, really do.
Yeah. Yep.
But we'll talk about On Her Majesty's Secret Service a little bit later. Oh, these things are so good too. All right, guys, LK, Johnny, everybody checking on tonight, Backyard Moments. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, stay extreme. Have a good night.